What is up, everybody? Welcome back to our YouTube channel. You're hanging out with
the realest OG in the building, and of course I'm with my main man
Harold Mumuli hapa ndani. Tuko humu with another one.
Yeah, with another.
Naona tukispit hizi vitu zinakuja
tukuja.
Itabidi watuzoee.
Itabidi watuzoee.
Wapenda asipende. They can't avoid
Hawezi to avoid. Episode 14.
14.
Yeah, it's 14. Yeah. Going strong still.
I like the consistency.
Yeah. Consistency hiyo na watu wasema lazima manze tuichape. Fiki episode 100 and then tuone vile itakuwa. Si hadi tunasimamia hapo. But hiyo ndio
100 ndio in a checkpoint.
Yeah, checkpoint.
Yes,
checkpoint. Yeah.
Okay, very good to hear. How are you?
I'm good. You know, fresh all day every day.
What? Ana pia mimi niko salama. Passionate. Skuma maisha.
That's nice.
Hapa kule.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Last time ulisema utakuwa na maswali zangu.
Oh no.
I'm sure ulisahau. Which is a good thing. Actually, it's a bad thing because hiyo ni tao imenitoka tu.
No.
Nilikuwa sure hizo swali zako nitazidi.
Guys, itafika episode 100 na nitawaambia kile amecheza hapa. But hapo hiyo mchezo umecheza, it's fine. It's very okay. But let me promise episode 15.
Okay, so but I have one question for you. But this one I think you know it because I had planned to ask it the last time. But then I decided not to. So you know the Sistine Chapel, eh?
The
Sistine Chapel.
Sistine?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You don't know the Sistine Chapel? It's a chapel in the
Unajua
Sistine Chapel, eh? It's a chapel in the Apostolic Palace. It's in the Vatican City, the official residence of the Pope. And
inaitwa the Sistine Chapel,
where
the Pope addresses. Is it the one?
I'm not sure that is the one that anatukanga ko balcony and address was but there's a chapel there called the Sistine Chapel. So there's a ceiling, of course there's a ceiling there that was painted by a very, very famous and well-known painter. So I wanted to ask you who painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. But you can go and actually check it out later. I'm sure wase wanaijua umsema nje. Juri mbara but nilikuwa nimekuweka mahali hapa but it's all good. But niko na feeling you know it. You're just playing, unanichezea tu hapo.
No, I for sure I don't know the name. But hizo mambo za paintings na the designing of the glass windows. Okay, that one I know. But I don't know the answer to that question because I don't know that chapel. So
it's but by the way, just go and then muangalie. It's very interesting.
Was it painted in the 12th century?
I think
12th.
Wait. I think 12th, 13, 14 or 15. I'm not sure.
Okay. Then I'm off. So.
Yeah.
It's fine. So who painted it? Now that you're also we're also getting some history here.
So I'm not sure how the people wanna pronouncing jina be different. So others pronounce it Michelangelo, others Michelangelo. I don't know, whichever works for you.
But very interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway.
At least itabidi niende Google nipate info. Tumeipata hapa. Okay.
But yeah.
Next time na kucharaza.
Say by the way, we will hold him accountable to the promises that is giving us on the show. Anasema atakuwa na maswali next time. He'd better have those questions in episode 15. History ya kujapa. I forgot. Jamani ma tactics. Anajua hizo maswali kuzichapa nikulewe tao. Boss.
Okay. So
anyway, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about emotions versus
logic.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the discussion for the day. I'm sure guys have already seen it in the description. Yeah. But yes. That's the topic we have for the day. And I think it's important for us to go through it because, again, we're trying to model we are trying to model as in the optimal being. Relax. But so with that, we would be missing a lot if we weren't able to address that topic. We missed addressing it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about it? Wacha kwanza tuanze hivyo even before we extract mambo za sijui definitions and all that. What do you think when I say emotion versus logic? What comes to you? Doesn't have to be a definition. Let's just go with.
I think what comes to mind, even before we get to the definitions, emotion is just. I'm thinking emotion is when you just do things without maybe putting so much thought into them. You just do them based on your feelings, somehow how you're feeling at a particular point. And then logic is, you're reasonable. You're like, yes, I might be feeling this way about this particular thing, but my feelings aside, what is the, I don't want to say logical thing to do. What is the rational, reasonable thing to do?
Rational or reasonable.
Yeah. And I think even in that answer, I've more or less like given a definition, a loose definition of what emotion
and logic
and logic are.
Okay.
So okay, you can actually just tell us what you understand by emotion and logic.
Okay, emotion. I like to whenever I think about the two, I like to think about the as in we are more or less creatures that have evolved to this state, and to get to this point, our brains have had to evolve and develop a lot for us to get to this point, right? And with those two, as in emotion to me, wacha tu nianze na emotion as a definition then, because here I'll trail a lot. Emotion is partly what is evoked by either by a stimuli or a reaction. So an action. So it's more or less the default reaction that we'd have as beings. As in, mostly I wouldn't relate emotion with thought process. As in, I'd like to think that our mind stores some data so that when something happens, automatically you're able to react by default, and that's where I was going with the entire evolution and all that. But with logic, what we're trying to talk about is you will use data, you will use information to make a decision on what needs to happen, right? Nimeenda sana,
so okay, so it's a detailed I think sort of like definition or explanation. So the long and short is logic is more of, it's more of you using, let's say, your head, but emotion, it's you using your heart when it comes to making decisions.
It is easy to say yes to that statement.
Because the head, if you say using your head, there's that thought process that you're saying, there's that data that you're considering,
yes, you're processing information.
But for emotion, it's more of what I feel. I may not, yes, the data may be there, but I may choose to just set it aside.
In most cases, we wouldn't even consider the data.
That's
what I like. That's what I tend to relate emotions with. That it's not about the data. It's about how has it made me feel. As in now, when I talk about an action, when an action is either whether knowingly or unknowingly, an action is now, let me call it, within my vicinity, I will react to it. So when we're talking about emotion, it's that I'll call it the default, let me say in quotes, default reaction that I will have towards that, action. But with logic, I will take some time to process. In most cases, logic tends to have some lag, as in you will process then react. In most cases, unless you have perfected the art of logical thinking, or unless you're a computer.
Okay.
But with emotions, they tend to be very reaction.
So I'm curious. Based on that, what do you, most of your decisions in life, what would you attribute them to? Is it logical thinking or just emotional
thinking?
Yeah.
I would like to think of myself as a logical thinker, or an I lean towards, let me say I lean towards being logical. I'm sure I'm probably wrong, because labda kuna mse amekaa hapo na anasema you jamaa nimewapa chance ya kuniattack kwa comment.
Yes, self-appraiser yake hebu tuicritique hapo.
But yeah, I try, let me say I try to be logical, because you will notice that as you're operating, as you're swimming in life, as you're swimming in this ocean called life, you'll realize a lot of things happen that catch you unprepared, and for you to be completely logical, you would need to train yourself, coach yourself, and just keep on strengthening the, let me call it, logical muscle for you to maintain being logical. Because again, our minds I don't think we have the control. I stand to be corrected again. I don't think we have the control of either being logical or emotional. It's just that sometimes if you have that level of intelligence to say, hey, I need to be logical about this. Here are my emotions. I'm looking at most of the times where I've been either irritated, angered, hungry, all those. I'm just grouping all those emotions as one. That most of the time, I may have been logical, but I'd like to think I'm a logical being. What about you?
Hey, you didn't even allow any follow-up questions. This is vitu wanirushianga hata utakangi like ni big.
Ni warumoto wanirushia warumoto leo. Okay, sorry.
But anyway, it's okay.
Then you'll follow up once you respond.
So for me, I tend to look at logic and emotion as two sides of the same coin. So there are some decisions, or there are some instances where, logically, like you have to like make a decision based on the facts and the data that you have. There are some decisions that do not even allow you to bring in emotion. It's just we just look at the facts, and then based on the facts, let's decide to move. But there are others that we call like, hey, Ziafa. Yes, there is the logic, but then emotions tend to take over. So I think the dominant,
let's call it
trait is logic.
For you as well?
Is logic.
Yes. You're logical.
Yes, I am very logical. I tend to look at the data, but still,
it's very difficult to say that.
It's very difficult to say that I'm like, the dominant trait that I possess is, logical thinking, because there are some instances where I will just throw the logic outside the window and just go with my emotions. So I think even as we were just, warming up to this episode, we were thinking of, for example, something like buying a car. So you might go to a car dealer, and then logic, especially in this time and age where the economy is really, the cost of living is so logic would dictate that you buy a car that is fuel efficient. It does not consume a lot of fuel. Maybe if you have maybe a family, you're looking for a car that will be able to accommodate the entire family comfortably, and still does not consume a lot of fuel. But when you're there and then you tell that to your dealer tells you, okay, these are the cars that I have,
but you look like someone who
exactly you look like someone who would drive this. You see this? And then that guy is reaching out to your emotion, because even you, maybe your emotion is telling you like, by the way, I just need like a nice sports car EV. You know, it may be like, you know, the CC inaweza kuwa like ma 2000 2500 huko
mafuta ni nini
mafuta ni nini unaona
familia kwani nitawabeba kila
siku tunaenda wapi unaona. So your emotions might, you know, make you lean towards getting that sports car that consumes quite a lot of fuel, and that will not allow you to hata uwezi patia watu wawili watatu lift because hakuna space. Yeah, but logic on the other hand, if you're logical, you will go with it. So it depends.
And if you are actually logical, you wouldn't buy that car. Ungeamua upandage
exactly. Yes. Or in if you're a logical person, let's say, even something like clothing. What is the purpose of clothing? Just to kujifunika, story to ishi hapo.
Very true.
But if you go to this, you know, to the shop and you're just driven by logic, you'll just buy anything as long as it covers you, and you know that is that. But emotion will come in and you're like, I need something that looks fancy kidogo, you know, just
lazima ikae
mpya watu wanitambue. I need to feel like
it's not a brand.
But it's not Nike, it's not Adidas, it's not nini. I need to unaona. So it's tricky because in different scenarios you will find yourself thinking very logically, by the way, and the decisions that you make will be 100% based on logic. But in other scenarios you will just find yourself just acting emotionally, and then logic comes in later
to just do the, let me call it, damage control.
And then sometimes by the way, even I think when people are buying things or making decisions, we're just focusing on people buying things because it's a bit easier for people to relate with them. So even sometimes people buy things based on emotion, and then later on when someone questions you, okay, so you bought this phone for this much. Okay. So emotion drove you to buy that phone. Maybe it's way expensive, you know, functionality zake haziko. But when someone asks you about it, you will find
it with your life.
Yes. And then you will find logical reasons to actually justify
the purchase,
the emotional purchase that you made earlier. So it's
very true.
Yeah,
and actually I think just to also agree and add on to that point, there are some times where I have had to make a decision and I'm like, I know I'm very logical by making this. I have done the analytics, I've done all the work as far as logic is concerned.
Yeah.
Then only in retrospect we come back and be like, hey, this was very emotional, my friend. I thought, which is why when you're asking me whether I'm logical or emotional, it's very difficult to even say, hey, I'm a very logical person. For me, if it's not logic, achana nayo. It swings a lot.
Yeah, it swings.
It swings a lot. And I think one of the things I try to do is, for me now, nikuangalia tu, all I do is I'll check the historical data. I'll just check myself. I remember that back then this is what I did, and if that scenario matches whatever situation I'm in now, I'll be like, okay, here, let me do this. Tutajulia mbele kama it's logical or emotional, because it's very difficult to sway in the waters. I wanted to also ask you something. You mentioned that you're very logical.
Okay, now as we continue with this conversation, I'm also trying to reevaluate that answer. I'm thinking, am I very logical as I thought I was? Now I'm thinking, by the way, some of the decisions that I've made, quite a number, by the way.
Quite a number. Where at the time you needed to make that decision, they're like, this is logic. What do you mean? Then you go back and you're like, wait.
Yeah.
And I think it's because when you have to make that decision, the situation puts you in this setup where you think the stakes are as in dead or alive. Stakes are win or lose. And when those stakes are that high, it is very difficult to harness the power of logic. I think now true. That's what I see. True. But now put some time as in between that decision and yourself, and you'll be like, by the way, here, this is what I should have done. Clearly, I think that's also why I'm very hesitant to mention that I'm a logical person. But what I wanted to ask you is, as a logical person, let's okay, for discussions.
But anyway, as a logical person,
did you, as in, have you been logical since time immemorial? Is it a muscle that you've, let me now call it a muscle. Is it a muscle that you've had to build?
Actually, by the way, I think during the formative years, as you're growing up, I think most of the decisions that people make during those early years are more emotional than logical. Yes. But as you age, maybe as you get to 18 years old, as you
formative years are from what age?
Okay, like
apologies.
Ukianza grow, like from when you're a child, getting to age 10, hitting puberty, adolescence. So during those years, I think most of the decisions that people make
are very emotional.
Very emotional. But as you grow and as you become more aware of yourself, and as you finish school and then you get into the workforce, you start to realize, okay, I need to be a little less emotional and a bit more logical with the decisions that I make. I think for me that has been the
trend for you.
Yeah, the trend, and that's why I'm saying right now, I consider myself a bit more logical
than
emotional by the, and I'm sure the people who know me, among my friends, family, they can actually attest to this. I tend not to pay so much attention to emotion. I'm the person that will say, okay, does this make sense? And then even if maybe you will be mad at me, angry at me, I will still say no, it doesn't make sense. Let us go with the logic here.
Okay. So wesi ule mse utangala useme, usini ule jamali.
But
proposal is interesting, but tunangala, wait a minute, uni ule jamawa.
Lakini, funny thing, like we've still said, you cannot, it's still hard, because you'll still find that even if you're saying you're a bit more logical now, there are still decisions that you will make emotionally. So for example, you see this phone, I bought it a while ago by the simple by the funny thing phone. That time when I went to buy it, I don't know if it was in 20, because in Mecca, like close to, I think 2021, I think. What? Close to 2-3 years there. What? So back then when I went to buy it, I had like another phone that was ilikuwa inanisumbua, so I was tired. I was like, let me just go and buy another phone. So when I went to buy that, when I went to buy this phone, I didn't even bother. As in, you see the way people go and check at it. So RAM, sijui, space, sijui, processor, especially watu wa IT, sijui, processor, sijui, nini, camera, megapixels. Me, I didn't even bother about those things. Plus, I'm not huge on, these things. So I just wanted something that looked nice. That ilikuwa tu inakapua. It's same as that sports car example. I didn't care about the specs of the phone. I just wanted something that looked nice, simple, felt nice.
Was usable.
Yes, usable, could fit into my pocket very easily. So that purchase was purely based on emotion. And it a few months later, I think kulikuwa na issue ya Huawei, because it's a Huawei. And the fact
there's that time where they had the US ban, and you couldn't install anything from Android.
So that time I couldn't install. Actually, after I bought it, I think it was like 2-3 days later. I was trying to install some apps, so I couldn't install them. So I actually remember, and I know wezi kumbuka. I remember calling you and I told you, by the way, I have this phone I bought.
I remember. I asked you what model was it.
What model?
And you told me Huawei, and I was like,
Huawei.
I remember that call.
Pia sikuwa najua that Huawei had this issue. Sijui whatever, there was this
they had a feud for quite some time. I think it was the battle of 5G. Essentially, what let me call them the superpowers felt was that whoever delivered 5G first would actually have a lot of merits, would have a lot, So they were trying to throttle all the operations from China, so they were now addressing. Okay, there's a lot of conversation on that. Let me also quote mahali, but essentially that's what was happening.
So you see, me at that time, like I didn't consider something like that. Because ningekuwa logical, I would have considered, okay, so I want this phone, it looks nice, it's easy to use, whatever, things like that. But can I be able to download? So essentially, I just had a phone that I couldn't use. By the way, I think even WhatsApp, it was a headache for me to download it. I think you're actually the one who installed it. I don't know what you did.
It took some time.
Yeah, but you eventually were able to download WhatsApp. But all other apps, all Google apps, I don't have them. Even right now, I don't have them. YouTube,
Google. I believe a couple of them have caught up.
But sasa, like, nilifika 2 points nikachoka. So you see, this whole time, like, you're trying to get an app. Even I think at that time, I don't know if something like Uber couldn't download. So I think at that time, there was a time that I wanted to get an Uber, kitambo kidogo. So you can't download the app. As in, you're just stuck. So I'm thinking, why did I even make this purchase in the first place? Yes, the phone looks nice, has like a nice shape, but that emotional purchase, you see what it's costing me. So for me, that's why I'm saying there's some instances where
you still will identify more with the emotions.
Because even now, by the way, to be honest, even when I go to buy a new phone, I will still look for a phone. So okay, I will consult you. I know. I'll consult you when it comes to the specs and everything. So for me to get that logical perspective. But then once you've given me that information, with that information, I will still
emotional
put
sway
some emotional sway to it. So I'll look for a phone with these specs that you've given me. I'll look for a phone that looks nice, that I'll feel good about, that things like that. So
okay, so very interesting for you, because you've mentioned that as you're starting, you're emotional, then built up on logic. For me, I think it goes like that.
Okay.
When I started as a kid, I was very logical.
Really?
Yes, very logical. No, hapana, ilikuwa when I say logic, I mean ukinikula coffee right, pia mimi nakukula right. Unaelewa? Very logical. Then adolescent hit me. Very emotional. I can remember by there I was very angered from time to time, and I would get very angry, as in all these emotions. You get, I'd be very joyful, make decisions based on that, on whatever emotional state I'm in. But that was about, I think, from 16 to about 20. To about 22. Tutulia tuchezeko 22. Only then did I start building that muscle. I'll call it a muscle because I think you have to be very intentional to be logic. Otherwise, just emotions just hit and you just. So for me, 22 onwards, it has been about building that logical muscle. Because if you don't build it, for me now, as the way I'm analyzing or assessing myself, I'd be a very emotional being. Ukinikasirisha leo, my friend, tunamemalizania hapo, and kazoze ile nye it's 0 to 100. That was me back then. So when we're talking about building that muscle, it was sitting down and doing that assessment that, okay, if I reflect on today, I was very angry. Why was I angry? It's because someone did that to me. Okay, if they did that to you, how do you even know it's that they did it to you? Probably they were just doing something that affected you. So as in, it's that assessment. And you're like, okay, now if at least now I know if it happens again, it's not necessarily about me, it's about something else. But hapo sasa, that's very specific to that anger emotion. But now again, with joy, again, you might be very happy and make decisions based on the happiness. And I'ma make decisions on that happiness foundation. And now you realize that you have clogged yourself in the future because the decisions you were making here were on a foundation of happiness, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I really try to assess myself. Just think about, hey, okay, take a chill pill. It's more or less sitting down with myself, myself, and I. Myself, and I tunakaa tunaulizana, okay, I saw that here, this is what happened. What do you think about it? And that has been me trying to build up the logic in me. Otherwise, I'd say I'm a very emotional being, but I've been swaying towards
by the way,
logic.
For me, with the interaction that we've had over the years, I'd say you're more of a logical thinker. But there are instances but there are instances where and that's why we were saying, I think even the previous episode, if you go back to it, thinkers versus doers, it touches a bit on what we're talking about here.
Yeah, actually, easy McCallback, my friend.
Yeah, by the way,
we're referencing everything.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched that one, by the way, please go back. We'll leave a link somewhere here on the screen. Yeah. So I think I remember in that episode we described you as being more of someone who analyzes the situation, the facts, the data, and everything.
Yeah, I get what you're trying to say.
Which marries to this topic of you being a logical person. So you'll just analyze everything, just look at the facts. So for you, I know you're more of that. You're more of a logical thinker. But I've also seen instances, just very isolated instances where
I'm sure I've seen them as well.
You are very, very emotional, and I'm like, what? Ushai kujipata kwa situation unashtuka uko hii sasa hii moto tutaizima aje, huyu sasa amewaka kuwaka, unaona? And then you're used to this logical, calm, cool, collected person, and then all of a sudden something just triggers them and they just act so emotionally. Yeah.
When I think of myself as now the teenager who was in adolescent stage, that's the person I remember. Mwenye ukimwambia tu imeenda me and
hakuna ati uka tufikirie story itakuwa
kwanza tu. So for me, actually, now if we're referring to that callback of the thinkers versus doers, for me as a thinker, it has really helped. It has really helped me tame the emotional aspect of me, because most of the times the decisions I have made in my emotional state have been decisions that I would sit back and be like, by the way, if I had just taken some time to just reflect and just think about it. And it's not that I'm saying that emotions are terrible. Sometimes actually the best decisions I've made were based on emotion.
True.
But it's that for me it has been most of the decisions I've made based on emotion have steered me wrong. So it's been an advantage to build that logical muscle to help in. Because I'd say for me, if 100% were the decisions I needed to make, 30% were the emotional decisions that were very fruitful. The 70% were like decisions I'm like, hey,
I know. But I was also curious. Does the environment we are operating within affect our decision making? Are we more emotional in some environments? Are we more logical in others? Case in point, let's say work. So, what would you say would be the dominant trait when it comes to decisions surrounding work?
Very interesting. That's a very interesting question. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it, but yes, I would say the environment at times sways whatever option we take, because of course if I'm at work, there's that I don't want to call it a guard, but there's that persona that you have to embody. There's that perception you need to maintain that, hey, Haron ni ule wa good day, how are you?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Yeah.
Hata as in ukiangalia mail na vile mtu anaongea, you're like, hey, same person, what?
Even if the other person on the other side of the email is writing sijui whatever, amewaka moto, amekutupia kila kitu, you still just okay, relax.
Yes, but if you're looking at especially the workplace, I would say in general, I think it's in general that we'll tend to be a lot more logical than in any other sitting around. I think in the workplace, I think in public places probably. Public places isipokuwa kwa traffic
Hey, kwa traffic hapo kila mtu anakuanga tu emotional hapo, logic aturanga hapo.
Unaweza kuwa jamaa yako tu sawa ati ukiingia kwa gari ati so today I'll spend 90 bob kwa ukiingia hivi kwa gari umeacha logic hapo. Unaanza na kuzushia steering wheel.
Mara mtu amekuingia hivi, ulikuwa tu na siku mzuri, ulikuwa tu umeshamtukana, you know. But I agree, in the workplace, most of the decisions will be driven by logic. Like we've said, even if, for example, you know, your boss someone asks you asks for your opinion regarding maybe something at work, you will definitely have to look at the facts. You can't just go and say, I feel as though as in this one no,
hata nilichoka nayo sasa hapo. So imagine telling your boss, hata mimi nilichosha na hii mambo. Kwani mtaniulizanga kila
you can't. You have to be logical. You have to be, you know, you have to consider facts, reports, you know, before you make that decision. So I think when you're at work, there's that guardrail of logic that within which you have to
operate in.
To operate in. And at work, regardless of how you're feeling, you know, regardless of whichever day you're having, hata kama bibi yako mlizushina naye asubuhi mkitoka kwa hao, when you get to work, like, your boss doesn't care, your colleague doesn't care, it doesn't just hizo emotions zote, do not let them spill over to work. So just let us but I'm trying to think somewhere like at home, let's say, or personal relationships, friends, family, and there I tend to think that it's you know, it's more emotional. But I'm not sure. So let me ask you, for example, if your girlfriend asks you that, hey, so baby, you're going out for dinner, you know, to some place, and then she asks, do you think I look fat in this dress? Do you think I've gained some weight?
Trick question. Where is a trap? Do not answer. Hapo hata ulete topic mzito. Uanze kuuliza, ati tulisema tunaenda restaurant gani? Where? Ati do I look fat? What?
So that is a question that she's just posed to you. So how do you respond to that?
Me, of course, the response ni boilerplate. Insert beautiful comment here.
So that is
insert compliment, whatever compliment in your messiah here.
Because you know how that night will end up is more or less dependent on how you will answer response, that question. So you see, that is an emotional response there. You're telling her, okay, I think you look nice, you know, it's, you know, you look beautiful. But at the back of your mind, the logical answer would be,
I actually look like you've added 5 kgs.
You've added 5 kgs. That dress does not even fit you. Maybe go and look for another one that fits. And you probably need to join the gym.
So relax. No, actually, you know, when we
that time, as in, I'm sure, baby, sijui hapo atakuwa tu amewaka moto.
Yes, you're not going to dinner, of course.
Whatever
you think you're still going for dinner, wapi?
And probably she wouldn't talk to you for like the next 3 months. So of course it's true, it's a logical answer, but
it's not the best time
wisdom
to give that
dictates
answer.
That you
You will probably be in a better relationship if you just give her the compliment then then baadaye una slide in utu two options. Si tuende gym hivi leo.
Yes. Yeah.
But I agree with you, and now when it comes to the matters of logic and emotions in the home setting, for me, okay, let me first say that in general I have tried to be as logic as possible, because I have emotions too. Now for me inakuaga spike in the opposite direction. But in general, if I compare the level of logic I use in the office versus the level of logic I use at home, they vary. Kwa ofisi, it's just insane levels of logic, where by the way, if you piss me off in the office, ile effort umechapa, my friend, ile effort umechapa,
kuna huruma.
But at home and all that, it's a lot easier.
So logic and emotion, it's very much dependent on, to some degree, where
you are. Actually, hata hiyo example yenye you are giving ya gari, by the way, I okay, sometimes hata we've been on in the same car where you're driving, and me and your co-pilot, I don't wait for you to react to someone who's done something wrong. I'll be like, uko na shida gani? As in, in the different, as in, if someone was to see me there and be like, ndo Aaron office, they'd be like, no, I don't think.
Nasema labda ni kalana tu kameingia tu lane vibaya.
Na meka L pande zote mbili mbele
kana ubaya. Labda hata tu atujua
hata ni kagari karoki.
Kagari karoki hata sasa. Then maybe we don't know the kind of day that that person is also having. So
very true. You see, that's logic kicking in for you already. That okay, probably they're going through something. Let me just try and be the reasonable one here.
Plus, I won't allow, because if I'm emotional, then someone like that would make me angry. I'll just talk back at them, even if they're not hearing me. I'll just say mean words to them, and then right there and then my mood is just off. So even when I get to the office, I'm just in a very, very bad mood.
Very bad mood.
So like you see, and maybe the starting point is that car driver who has just cut you off in the lane. So that whole day utaenda tu now ukiwa tu emotionally all over the place. But if I look at it and say maybe that is someone who is just having a bad day, and niachia hapo, I'll just go to work normal, because nishasahau juu mse nimeenda tu job na story imeishia hivyo.
I'm curious to find out, is that now discipline or is it logic? Because it's, as we've noted already, that when emotion is involved, it's more or less a chain reaction. So you need to contain that reaction before it hits the chain, right? So is it discipline that you are deciding to not get involved or be engaged in the various emotional states that you would be in these occurrences? Or?
I think first of all, it helps if you are aware. If when you're faced with a decision, you just take a step back and think, okay, how am I going to react here, emotionally or logically? And then there's something that you said, that for you, it took that time to just build that muscle, that logical muscle, which I think for you to build that muscle of thinking logically, then there has to be that discipline, and that you have to be very intentional and just say that I need to be a bit more logical in my decisions. So whatever you're saying that you need to work on it, build that muscle. And I think for you to build that muscle, discipline then kicks in. So yeah, it's a bit of both. You need that discipline.
They've crossed each other. There are crossovers. There are a lot of crossovers.
So you need that discipline to be able to get to yourself to that point where you think logically. Yes, there are instances where
like
emotions,
water.
be like water, be like what. That is actually the 48, the law 48 of the 48 laws of power.
48 laws of power.
Yeah.
But I had it from Bruce Lee.
Okay.
Empty your mind.
True,
That's
true.
what comes to mind as well. So are we saying here that we need to be logical than emotional? Because as I've mentioned, 30% for me has been emotion.
For me, I'd say,
and I have, and for those decisions that have been that those emotional decisions I've made, the 30% have been the best decisions I've made in my life. Let me summarize that.
I think it's more beneficial, but it also varies. But it's more beneficial if you act logically, because, like we said, logic dictates that you consider all the facts, you consider all the data, the information, which means you're not walking blindly. So logic will tell you, there's this road. It looks dark. It's a neighborhood that I'm not very familiar with. It may be shorter, but is it safe? So logic will tell you no, don't go there. Emotions will be like, twende. So I think logic in most decisions, helps in that we consider all factors and then we make informed decisions. But on the other hand, there are situations where, like we said, it also depends on the environment. There are environments where you will, yes, the logic is there. I know, I can see she's added a bit of weight, but I cannot tell her that. Let me just tell her she looks nice, and then I'll find a way of just, putting my point across maybe in the future. Maybe just we can join the gym together, and then we encourage each other. But yes, also depends on different scenarios, different environments, whoever you're also dealing with. So that takes me to wisdom. You need wisdom to be able to gauge what is it that is required here in this particular scenario that I'm faced with. Is it logic? Is it emotion? Is it a mixture of both? So I think emotion is on one extreme end, logic is on the other extreme end, but wisdom is right there at the middle. And with wisdom, you will be able to know, do I proceed with logic or emotion? So it's depending on also a lot of other factors that you're faced with. So I think that is how I would approach it. But more often than not, I will definitely lean towards logic. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Added to now the scenarios that you've mentioned, there are those situations where actually by there you've tamed yourself to be very logical, that as in now it's more or less your demeanor, but now you're triggered towards emotion, as in ile someone is forcing it out of you. The fastest example that comes to mind is you yenye unaambiwa mimi siwezi ambiwa hivyo. Ama you're there with your girlfriend, with your mama. Ama akomia babe utamwachia niambie.
Someone is talking bad to your mama, and then now your mama anakuchocha ati babe unaacha ati aniangalia hivyo wani mwanaume ina gani
jamaa unaangalia
the guy is like 5 times your size.
Unse clearly ametoka shift ya kubounce ni sapa amekujia
hapo by the way, to be honest. Hapo by the way, emotion itafanya utagongo hapo vibaya sana, utapeleka hosi, but logic itakwambia tu niende mtaa,
atakwambia peana gapi,
nita lose my gangster voice kwa dem lakini nitafika home mtaa. But that is an interesting one. Another interesting one I think is when it comes to politics. I think politics is one of those areas where people, regardless of the level of education that you have, the level of wealth that someone has amassed,
specifically in Kenya,
and broadly speaking, even Africa.
I think
Yes,
it gets globally. I think
actually even global, by the way. So you will find that people, yes, we know that logically speaking, this is the candidate that would probably get us to where we want to be as a country. But emotion will just drive us to these two people that have been there for like ages, and we know maybe, they are the same people.
Nothing to show for it.
Nothing to show for it.
Anything.
So
they haven't progressed.
Exactly. So I think that is one of the areas where I think people have done studies over around that area. I'm very interested to know like how people just make decisions. And I am also like, I'm also Nico Apple, like even when it comes to politics, I'll find myself like making decisions emotionally. To be honest, baby, I won't lie. I'll just make decisions because yes, I can see there's this like a guy down here that maybe everyone, even the opinion polls are saying, they can't. Yeah, that wako chini, they are lagging behind. But emotion will just tell me, this guy, let us just give this guy, So I don't know. It's interesting, by the way.
It's very interesting,
and I don't know. People sometimes, and that's why I think emotion just outweighs logic in, I think, quite a number of areas. By the way, mostly you'll just find people acting emotionally, and then later on is when, like right now, people right now logic is kicking in, and we're saying, okay, maybe this is not the Nini that we were promised. Life is too hard. Things are, things like that. But before, you might have acted emotionally. But right now, like, logic is kicking in, and you're like, okay, what?
The consequence of that.
So, yeah, it's a very interesting, I think, discussion. Emotion versus logic. Yeah, and I think we can talk here, but I would also be very interested to see to hear what people out there think about this topic. What are the decisions that you have made in the past that have been driven by emotion
or by logic?
And,
if it's a matter of logic, how is it for you? How did you get to logic? Because I'd think that in general, for most people, the graph as far as growth is concerned is you will start with emotion ikiwa huku juu, then now you tamper it so that logic kicks in and all that. I would think that's how everyone operates. So just share your thoughts, share your experiences. If it's a matter of logic, what have you had to do for you to be able to consider yourself logical, or what have you had to do for your emotional aspect to help it more or less build to the results. What am I trying to say?
I think that is what you're trying to say.
Yes, as in how have you been able to make emotional decisions and still have the outcomes that you've intended. So just share with us on chat, or even communicate the same way you've been communicating. Thanks again, everyone, for interacting as much as you have in the past. So Kirenji, this has been real. I think till next time. If you're new here, before unataka kusummarize mapema.
Logic. Emotion is just.
If you're new here, please remember to like the video, comment, and share. And don't forget that red button. Your red button ni ya kubonyezwa. Finya kitu. Emotion.
Kupeleke hapo. Finya kitu. Chana na logic kwanza sana.
Chana logic. One extra YouTube channel. Kwani hiyo ni nini? Otherwise, guys, till next time. Deuces,